When we think about prehistory, we tend to jump right from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age. But what if I told you there's this incredible, revolutionary chapter kind of sandwiched in between? It's an era that's been overlooked for a long time, and believe me, it is way more than just a simple transition. This is the story of the Copper Age. All right, let's just dive right in. Take a look at this. This is the Varna man. Around 4500 BC, this guy, a chieftain in what's now Bulgaria, was buried with an absolutely jaw-dropping amount of gold. We're talking more than was known to exist in the entire world at that time. His people, they were part of this super sophisticated civilization, one of the very first great cultures in Europe. And then, poof, they just disappeared. And that mystery, right there, is really at the heart of the whole Copper Age revolution. So, to really get what happened to the Varna man and his people, we have to understand the era they basically defined. This period, sometimes called the Chalcolithic, it wasn't just some dusty old bridge between stone tools and bronze weapons. No. This was a time of radical invention that pretty much laid the groundwork for the modern world. To get the scale of this revolution, you gotta picture the world before it. For thousands and thousands of years, every single tool was made from something like stone or wood or bone. You could shape them, sure, you could use them, but once that stone axe shattered or your clay pot broke, that was it. Game over. It was totally useless forever. But then, something completely new shows up on the scene. A weird reddish stone that didn't shatter when you hit it. Instead, it bent. And if you got it hot enough in a fire, it literally transformed into a liquid that you could pour into any shape you wanted. And here's the real breakthrough. If your tool broke, you could just melt it down and make it new again. It was a material that you could recycle endlessly. That new material was, of course, copper. And learning how to work with it wasn't just another new skill. It was a fundamental shift in how people could interact with the world around them. It was the birth of an entirely new science, metallurgy. Put simply, metallurgy is just the science of turning special rocks, called ores, into pure metal. But don't let that simple definition fool you. This wasn't just a slightly better way to make pottery. This was a whole new way of thinking. And it required this deep, almost scientific understanding of geology, fire, and chemistry. And you really have to try and imagine the scene, right? In a world of stone and wood, someone takes a green rock, puts it in a crazy hot fire, and pours out this glowing liquid sun that cools down into a solid, shiny tool that's unbelievably durable. As the archaeologist Sven Hansen put it, these first metalworkers, they must have seemed like absolute wizards. The process they figured out was smelting. First, you've got to mine the copper ore. Then, you heat that ore up in a furnace to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. That separates the copper from the rock. And finally, you pour that molten metal into a mold to cast it into whatever you want, an axe, a chisel, you name it. It was a complex industrial process, and they invented it thousands of years ago. Now, for the longest time, the story of how metallurgy got started was pretty simple. It was invented once, somewhere in the Near East, and then it slowly spread out from there. But, as we're about to see, new evidence has just completely flipped that script. It's forcing us to rewrite the history books. Okay, so the old theory went like this. One single origin, a lone spark of genius in the Fertile Crescent. But the latest archaeology is saying, hold on a minute. It suggests metallurgy wasn't invented just once. Instead, it was discovered independently in multiple places. And the earliest, most solid proof we have for it now comes from a pretty surprising place, Europe. And where in Europe? The Balkans, home to one of the Copper Age's greatest civilizations, the ancient Vinča culture. Back in 2010, researchers at a site in Serbia found undeniable proof of copper smelting. Slag, furnace pieces, the whole shebang. And when they dated it, the results were just stunning. 5,000 BC. That's 7,000 years ago, pushing back the invention of this high-tech process by more than 500 years. But here's the thing. This wasn't some small-scale backyard experiment. When archaeologists tried to estimate how much copper was being produced and traded in the Balkans during this period, the number they came up with was just staggering. 4.7 tons. Now, what does that even mean? Well, it's enough metal to make something like 4,300 heavy-duty tools and weapons, things like axes and adzes. This was not a few wizards making trinkets. This was a full-blown industrial-scale operation. So, if the Balkans were pumping out thousands of copper artifacts, what about the place that was supposed to be the cradle of metallurgy, the Near East? Well, during that same time period, the number of artifacts they found there is, well, it's a lot smaller. Yeah, fewer than 300. The difference is just enormous. When you actually compare the evidence side by side, the sheer volume of metal points overwhelmingly to the Balkans, to cultures like the Vinca and the Varna, as the world's first great copper producers. But this technological revolution wasn't just about making better tools. It was about forging an entirely new kind of society. The impact of this one new material just rippled through every single aspect of life. And this is a really crucial point. Copper's true power wasn't just that it was a better material for a tool. I mean, a well-made stone axe could still chop down a tree just fine. The real importance of metal was social. It was rare, it was valuable, and it was incredibly complex to produce. And all of that made it the ultimate status symbol. Think about it. If you control copper, you control power. This led to the rise of privileged elites, guys like the Varna man, who managed the whole production and trade. It kickstarted long-distance trade networks for ores and finished goods. And, for the first time, it allowed for specialized weapons to be made, which led to the beginnings of organized warfare and the emergence of these complex, layered societies. It was a whole new world order, built on metal. And you can see this technology spreading and evolving all across Europe. These incredibly sophisticated copper axes, like the famous one carried by Otzi the Iceman, or others found as far away as Ireland, they became the ultimate symbols of this new era. These weren't just for chopping wood. These were statements of status and power. Which brings us right back to our original question. If these early European cultures, the Vinca and the Varna, were so advanced, so wealthy, so powerful, where did they go? Why did this amazing golden age of copper just stop? In the archaeological record, it's like a switch was flipped around 4000 BC. The huge settlements of what we call Old Europe were abandoned. The rich burials, like the ones at Varna, just stopped happening. A massive change swept through the region, and these pioneering civilizations collapsed. One of the leading theories points to the arrival of new people from the vast steppes to the east. These newcomers were a totally different kind of society. They're described as being patriarchal, stratified, mobile, and war-oriented. They brought a new culture, a new language, and a totally new way of life with them. So the great Copper Age civilizations of Old Europe faded into history, but their most important contribution, their real legacy, that wasn't lost. The revolutionary knowledge of metallurgy, that wizardry of turning rock into metal, that endured. It was adopted, it was adapted, and eventually it was improved upon, paving the way for the next great technological leap, the Bronze Age. In the end, the story of the Copper Age is this powerful reminder of how a single new material can completely reshape an entire world, creating new hierarchies, new conflicts, and brand new possibilities. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. What's the defining material of our age that's doing the exact same thing to us right now?